So Dave, we're gonna do the swearing in before we
Yes.
start the meeting then?
Yep.
Okay.
Judge McLean is here.
So I'll turn it over to you then.
Yeah, so I'll briefly introduce Judge Casey McLean, District Magistrate. He's here to swear in the newly elected officials as well as the returning elected officials that were re-elected this year. So congratulations to all around, and I'll just turn it over to Judge McLean to start us off.
Thanks, sir. We'll do them individually, and since there's no great order, we'll do them alphabetically. So, Laura Danini, would you please come forward? Thank you. And certainly, if anybody has family members, if you'd like them to be here, up here with you, that is always acceptable.
Come on up.
I don't know if you're supposed to take them when you're done or not. Do you want to hold the Bible?
Sure.
I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand. I, Laura Danini, do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity, that I have not paid or contributed or promised to pay or contribute, either directly or indirectly, any money or other valuable thing to procure my nomination for Ferguson Township Supervisor, except for necessary and proper expenses expressly authorized by law, that I have not knowingly violated any election law of this Commonwealth or procured it to be done by others on my behalf, that I will not knowingly receive, directly or indirectly, any monies or other valuable thing for the performance or non-performance of any act or duty pertaining to my office other than the compensation allowed by law. So say
I do.
all right, thank you. And I think this one works.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Do you want her to keep it, or?
Yeah, we'll hang on to them.
Okay.
You can have the certificate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ranjit Mitra. Mr. Mitra, come on down, sir. So, please raise your right hand. I, Prasenjit Mitra, do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity, that I have not paid or contributed or promised to pay or contribute, either directly or indirectly, any money or other valuable thing to procure my nomination for Ferguson Township Supervisor, except for necessary and proper expenses expressly authorized by law, that I have not knowingly violated any election law of this Commonwealth or procured it to be done by others on my behalf, that I will not knowingly receive, directly or indirectly, any monies or other valuable thing for the performance or non-performance of any act or duty pertaining to my office, other than the compensation allowed by law. So say it.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard. Do great things for our community. All right. You will. You can sign there, and I'll give you. Okay. That's
Thank you.
Ms. Stevens. Okay. Now, so you can put your left hand on. Raise your right hand. I, Patricia Stevens, do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity, that I have not paid or contributed or promised to pay or contribute, either directly or indirectly, any money or other valuable thing to procure my nomination for Ferguson Township Supervisor, except for necessary and proper expenses expressly authorized by law, that I have not knowingly violated any election law of this Commonwealth or procured it to be done by others on my behalf, that I will not knowingly receive, directly or indirectly, any monies or other valuable thing for the performance or non-performance of any act or duty pertaining to my office, other than the compensation allowed by law. If so, say I do. We'll do great things for our community. Can I ask you to sign here, please? Okay, now and Lisa Strickland. I, Lisa Strickland, do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity, that I have not paid or contributed or promised to pay or contribute, either directly or indirectly, any money or other valuable thing to procure my nomination for Ferguson Township Supervisor, except for necessary and proper expenses expressly authorized by law, that I have not knowingly violated any election law of this Commonwealth or procured it to be done by others on my behalf, that I will not knowingly receive, directly or indirectly, any monies or other valuable thing for the performance or non-performance of any act or duty pertaining to my office, other than the compensation allowed by law. If so, say I do.
I do.
Do great things. I'm going to ask you to sign. Do you want to give this to your husband? Okay. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Judge McLean.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Welcome new and returning members. As the
Thank you.
only one not being sworn in tonight. Welcome you to join me. So we now have a new board. I'll call to order the organizational meeting of the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors for Monday, January 6, 2020. Ask everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the next item on the agenda is the seating of the board, which essentially means presenting this is our new Board of Supervisors. So we're ready to take on the year's business. So, this is followed by the election of officers. As designated in the Home Rule Charter, I believe, the manager, or we will temporarily appoint the manager as the chair for the purpose of having the election of the chair of the Board of Supervisors. Then we'll continue the meeting. So at this point, I would ask for a motion to appoint Dave Probolka as temporary chair of the board.
I move the Board of Supervisors appoint Dave Probolka, Township Manager, as temporary chair of the Board of Supervisors.
I'll second. Okay, we have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. I will now accept nominations for the position of Chair of the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors.
I'd like to nominate Steve Miller as chair.
Second.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same side. I'm sorry, is this a roll call?
I
This
don't
is a
believe
roll
this one
call.
is.
Typically, we've done it as a roll
Okay,
call.
why we do that.
I'll do a
I
roll call.
don't,
I apologize.
didn't
That's
actually look to see if it should be.
my
so.
mistake. This is why I'd be a terrible chair. Ms. Denany,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Mitra,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Strickland.
Yes.
Turn it over to the chair.
Okay, I will, thank you, and we will continue with the election of a vice chair of the board. So I'll open nominations for vice chair.
I'll nominate Laura Denny for vice chair.
I'll second that.
Yeah, we don't really need second nominations, so they're just made. So are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I will close the nominations, and we'll do a roll call vote for vice chair.
Ms. Denny?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes,
Mr. Mitra?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
motion carries. Next is the appointment of a secretary treasurer, which typically has been the township manager. So I'll take a motion, or take nominations for secretary treasurer of the board.
I'll nominate Dave Probaka as secretary treasurer of the board.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll close nominations and take a vote for secretary treasurer.
Ms. Denny?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Mitra?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next, we have a number of annual appointments. What I'm going to do, in the past, we've gone through these, and every single appointment went through the process we just went of nominating someone to fill it and voting through it, which after you do this about 30 times, it gets a little tedious and long. So I've been trying for several years to find a more efficient way to do it, and actually reading through the, let's see which one, oh, the
Administrative code.
it was the administrative code, yeah, it's not the home rule charter, it's the administrative code. It spelled out that procedure, and it said, unless overruled by a majority of the Board of Supervisors. So what I would ask is that someone make a motion that we, for this meeting, authorize the Board of Supervisors to approve related appointments in a single vote.
I move that in this meeting, the board be able to approve nominations in a single vote.
Okay? I do need a second for that one.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion and a second to change the procedure. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That will simplify things. So we'll start with, we have annual appointments for positions that essentially are related to administration. We have a manager's recommendation for a number of these. So what I will do is I will read that off a slate of the recommendations, and then we'll proceed with a nomination. The positions are solicitor, Joseph Green; local services tax collector, Linda Welker; health officer, Brian O'Donnell; certified public accountant / auditor, Baker Tilly Virchow Kraus LLP; sewage enforcement officer, Walt Schneider as the primary, Corey Warner, James Royer, Robert Royer as alternates; earned income and net profits tax, Center Tax Agency; tax administrator, Dave Brabalka; consulting engineers, NTM Engineering for stormwater and lighting. So the procedure will be, I would take a nomination to appoint that slate, but before doing that, if anyone would like to pull any of those nominations out of the single vote, you have an opportunity to do that. That would be if you want to vote against one of the nominees, if you want to nominate somebody else, if you're just really into this process and want to extend it out longer, or for procedural reasons, we can pull that out just by request from any board member. And I would actually like to pull the solicitor nomination to a separate nomination for reasons I'll explain when we get to that. Is there any other nominations that anyone would like to remove from the slate? In that case, I would take a nomination to appoint the slate as read, with the exception of solicitor.
And on this, you're looking for a motion to approve the slate?
Yeah, it would be,
Okay.
or I guess a nomination of that slate would be the way we'd do it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I nominate the slate as read minus Joe Green.
Okay, and that does not require a second, so we will take a roll call vote to approve those nominations as a group.
Ms. Denneny?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Mitra?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Okay, and the reason I asked to pull the solicitor appointment from that is it's really a different procedure than the rest of those appointments. Those appointments were all essentially administrative appointments that are, we take the recommendation from the manager and his staff as to who should be appointed, and then we have to approve that appointment. The solicitor is actually the role of the board to appoint the solicitor. So it's a separate type, or different type of appointment. In the past, we have had interviews to talk to several candidates for the role of solicitor in the township. If any board member or the board as a whole would like to consider a different solicitor in future years, or if the solicitor were to decide they no longer wanted to continue in that position, I would ask that the chair be notified, by September, so that we would have time to interview other candidates. But for this year, we do have a solicitor who has been working with us. The recommendation is that we continue the contract for solicitor with Joe Green. So I would take a nomination for appointment of solicitor.
I nominate Joe Green as solicitor for 2020.
Okay, are there any other nominations? In that case, I would ask Dave to do a roll call.
Ms. Denneny?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Mitra?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Next, we have appointments to authorities, boards, and commissions. And before I read these, I'm going to get a drink of water, because it's a long list. The authorities, boards, and commissions, normally we interview candidates for that in December. We actually did not do interviews this year because the qualified applicants that we had were pretty much matched the positions we had to fill, and we didn't have anything where there were several candidates contending for one appointment. So I will read off the appointments that are recommended. For the Planning Commission, we have Jeremy Thompson and Rob Crasweller returning as Planning Commission members, and Ellen Terracani as a new Planning Commission member. Planning Commission alternates, Lisa Rittenhouse. Zoning Hearing Board, Irene Miller-Wetzel as a returning member. Tree Commission, Josh Potter as a new appointment. Tax Review Board, Christina Whitaker as a new appointment. Industrial and Commercial Development Authority, Rob Crasweller as a returning appointment. Parks and Recreation Committee, Tessa Antalik and Robert DeMaio as new appointments. UAJA Representative, we do not have a nominee tonight. CATA Representative, John Spahalski as returning representative. The State College Borough Water Authority Liaison, Ford Stryker as a new appointment. And CNET Representative, Thomas Giles as a returning appointment. So I would take a nomination of that slate.
I will nominate that slate as read.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for any of those positions? In that case, all in favor, or no, back to roll call.
Ms. Denneny?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Mitra?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Okay, and I would point out that we do have several unfilled ABC appointments, so if anyone would like to apply for one, or if anyone knows somebody who would like to apply for one, that can go to Dave Walker. The current openings, I believe we have up to 2 Planning Commission alternates. Do we have Zoning Hearing Board alternates?
We have one, so
One
we have
zoning
up to
hearing board
2
alternate.
zoning hearing board
Okay.
alternates.
The Parks and Recreation Committee, 1 opening. And we have an opening for a second representative to UAJA Board. So if you know of anyone who would be interested in that, encourage them to, because we can make additional appointments throughout the year if there are vacancies, so we should continue that. Next is the appointments to authorities, boards, and, or not authorities, boards, and commission, to regional, COG and regional committees. Those are either board members or staff members, depending on the committee. I have talked to each board member individually, and so I have a recommended slate of representatives. So I'm recommending for executive would be Mr. Miller, public safety, Mr. Nini, finance, Mr. Miller, human resources, Ms. Stevens, public services environmental, Mr. Mitra, transportation land use, and the Center County MPO, Ms. Strickland as coordinating committee, and Ron Seibert on the technical committee. Parks Capital, Mr. Nini. Ad hoc facilities committee, Ms. Stevens. Solar power purchase working group, Eric Anderson. Spring Creek Watershed Commission, Mr. Mitra is the primary and Mr. Nini is the alternate representative. Central Area Cable Consortium, Mr. Miller. Central County Tax Collection Representative, Eric Anderson, and Dave as the primary, and Dave Trabalka as the alternate. Anyone care to nominate that as a slate?
I'll nominate that as the slate.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, turn it over to Dave.
Ms. Denini,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Mitra,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Strickland.
Yes.
Motion carries. Then there's an appointment to the Police Pension Advisory Board, which is one of the representatives, along with members of the staff and of the police union, that oversees the police pension and hires the consultants and make sure that we are following the guidelines for that pension investments. I served on that last year and be willing to do it again. Anybody wants to arm wrestle me for it, that's fine.
Do you want a
Take
motion,
nominations.
or do you want a
Just take
motion?
nominations.
A nomination?
Yeah.
I nominate Steve Miller to serve as the representative on the Police Pension Advisory Board for 2020.
Are there any other nominations? Dave?
Ms. Denini,
Yes?
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Mitra.
Yes.
Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Strickland.
Yes.
Carries. Now we need to establish the meeting dates for 2020. I'll turn that over to Dave.
So typically at the organizational meeting, the board has an action item to formally establish the meeting dates for the upcoming calendar year. It's been past practice that regular meetings are held on the first and third Mondays of each month at 7 p.m. right here in the main meeting room, except for those Mondays that fall on a township holiday. There are two dates that need to be held on the following Tuesday. That would be February 17th, would be moved to February 18th to observe President's Day, and September 7th, Monday, would be moved to September 8th in observance of Labor Day. So the recommended motion is listed in your packet there.
So I move the Board of Supervisors establish its regular meeting schedule for 2020 as the first and third Monday of each month, except that it will meet on February 18th and September 8th, and on the first two Mondays in December.
Second.
The motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the designation of depository.
It's practice for the board to formally designate a depository for the keeping and investment of township funds. This year, as in years past, the recommendation is that the board appoint Jersey Shore State Bank as the primary depository, and any FDIC insured bank, and the Pennsylvania Local Government Insurance Trust for investments as defined in the township's investment policy.
Do you want a motion?
Do we have a motion?
I move the Board of Supervisors appoint Jersey Shore State Bank as the township's primary depository and any FDIC insured bank and the PA Local Government Investment Trust for investments per the township's investment policy.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is a public hearing on a resolution establishing the agenda order of business for 2020.
Thank you. The resolution is provided with the agenda. As required by the administrative code, it establishes the agenda order of business for the upcoming year. No changes are proposed in the agenda order for 2020, and there's a recommended motion in your agenda narrative.
Okay, and because this is a public hearing, I would ask if anyone from the public cares to address the board on this issue. Seeing no rush to the podium, we'll close the public hearing and take a motion.
I'll move that the Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution establishing the agenda order of business for 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second as a resolution that requires a roll call vote.
This is presented as Resolution 2020-1. Ms. Denini?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Mitra?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next is a public hearing on a resolution adopting the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors procedures.
The resolutions provided with your agenda. As in years past, the board's asked to adopt a procedures manual that's appended to the resolution. Again, this has not been, there's been no changes that have been incorporated into the document from the 2019 version.
Okay, again, this is a public hearing, so if anyone cares to address the board. Seeing none, we'll move to a motion.
I'll move that the Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution adopting the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors Procedures Manual.
Second.
The motion and second. Any discussion? This will be a roll call because it's a resolution.
This is presented as Resolution 2020-2. Ms. Denini?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Mitra?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Motion carries, and I would now take a motion to adjourn the organizational meeting.
So moved.
We are adjourned. And now we move into the regular meeting. This is the regular meeting of the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors for January 6, 2020.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
No need for a break, okay. So this is a point, the first item on the agenda is citizens' input for anything that is not already on the agenda, if anyone cared to address the board at this point. Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the approval of the minutes for December 19th, 2019 Board of Supervisors regular meeting.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, under unfinished business, we have a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, approving and adopting post-issuance compliance procedures, appointing the township manager as compliance officer, and establishing general or annual reporting requirements associated with the issuance of a tax-exempt general obligation bond.
Thank you. So this is a requirement of IRS standards for the township's issuance of the general obligation bond in association with the financing of the Ferguson Township Public Works Maintenance Facility. The board will recall that towards the end of last year, the board authorized the issuance of just under $7 million in general obligation bonds to help fund the facility, and this resolution is kind of the last formal component of that. Township's required to separate the bond proceeds from its normal investments, meaning we need to track these separately, and we also are prohibited from keeping any return on the investment of those funds that's in excess of the bond amount. In other words, the bond yield is 2.378%. Excuse me. Any amount on interest that we earn in excess of that percentage has got to be turned back to the federal government within 5 years of the bond issue. we're not going to. Our investments are going to probably yield close to 1 to 1.5%. Nevertheless, this compliance resolution outlines that as part of the procedures that we indeed agreed to do that. Also, the Securities and Exchange Commission requires that the township upload its audit and budget by October 1st of each year. And finally, this resolution would designate myself, township manager, as compliance officer to ensure that we meet the standards of the IRS and those that are outlined in the procedure which is appended to the resolution. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but the procedures are listed as an appendix to the resolution that's in the agenda.
Thank you, Dave.
So I have a question. So the money that's, the interest that's earned is basically money that's put in Jersey State Bank, or where is the money kept and how is the interest earned?
So we would probably we're going to keep it in a very short-term CD. We expect that we're going to begin spending the money in March of this year. So, we're not going to tie it up in any investments for a length of time in excess of that. So once we issue the notice to proceed and we start to incur costs associated with the construction of the new facility, we're going to keep it in a liquid account, in basically a checking account with Jersey Shore. But in the 2 or 3 months that we're not using it, we'll put it in a CD and get a little bit better of a return, of a yield, but it's not going to be anything close to what the bond yield is. But that'll help us accrue a little more interest that we'll use to pay down the debt service.
And the CD is with the bank or with some other?
With the bank, it would be with Jersey Shore.
Thank you.
Any other questions? This is a public hearing, so if anyone cares to address the board on the matter. Seeing none, I would take a motion.
I move the Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution approving and adopting post-issuance compliance procedures, appointing the township manager as compliance officer, and establishing annual reporting requirements associated with the issuance of a tax-exempt general obligation bond.
I'll second.
Can we have a motion and a second? This is a resolution, so it requires a roll call vote.
This is presented as Resolution 2020-3. Ms. Denneny?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Mitra?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next, under new business, we have the consent agenda. I'm going to take a moment to explain for the new members exactly what the consent agenda is. Generally, these are items where we don't expect any need for discussion and where approval is more or less a matter of form. Notice on here we have the acceptance of the treasurer's report. The board's required to accept that report. We don't approve it or anything of that sort, we just accept it, which was made clear last year by Richard Kelly, who's an accountant. There are a number of pay applications. They are essentially administrative functions that require board approval. So those are presented. If there's any reason that a board member would want to discuss them, we can. Normally, there's nothing to discuss in those. And the third category is board member request for a agenda item. And this is a procedure we adopted, I think about 1.5 years ago, that if a board member would like to place an item on the agenda, we start by placing it on the consent agenda. This is simply tonight a question, do we want to add this as an agenda item? It's not any discussion of the item itself. Basically, the only case where this would come up for discussion is if someone did not want to place it on the agenda. For example, if a board member wanted to shut down College Avenue permanently as a pedestrian mall, I suspect there would be, the rest of the board would not be interested in even talking about it at a board meeting. So in that case, we might pull it off the consent agenda and just say, no, we're not interested in that discussion. Normally, if someone wants to place an item on the agenda, the rest of the board is fine with it. So it would be an unusual case where we would not pass it. That's why it's on the consent agenda. So the consent agenda is, we just vote on everything in one vote like we did with the nominations. If there is any item on the consent agenda that a board member would like to discuss, you ask before we vote on the consent agenda to pull it off, and it becomes a separate agenda item. So at this point, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, approving a sewage facilities planning module for the State College Borough Water Authority Nixon Coker Water Treatment Facility. I'll
Thank
turn that
you.
over to Dave.
So the board has with the agenda this evening a copy of the resolution that's required by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, which approves a component 4A sewage facilities planning module for the installation of a holding tank for on-lot sewage treatment at the property location of 3062 Ernest Lane. This would be to service what is called the Nixon Coker Water Treatment Facility, and it's a facility to treat water for the State College Borough Water Authority. This is in accordance, this module that's being presented to you for adoption this evening is done in accordance with the Pennsylvania Sewage Facilities Act of 1966, and it establishes that the submitted plan conforms to all applicable municipal ordinances and regulations governing the treatment of sanitary sewer. There's a handful of other documents that are incorporated with that resolution, as well as the alternatives analysis that was conducted by the Water Authority's consultant. If there's any questions this evening that I can't answer, we have a representative here, Brian Heiser, Executive Director of State College Borough Water Authority, Ken Belden with the firm Gwynn Dobson and Foreman, that I'm sure could answer or fill in the blanks for any questions that the board may have relative to the sewage facilities planning module. This is an approved land development plan, so that they've already got their approvals to build. I believe this is really the last step that is in between now and the development of the facility.
This is a public hearing, so if anyone cares to address the board on this motion? Bill, please go to the podium, yeah.
Bill Heckinger, 127 Hoy Street. Lately, our water has had a lot of chlorine in it, and it's got really bad today. It tastes kind of like rubber, and since Brian Heiser is here, it'd be nice if I brought this up in a meeting, I thought, in case some other people in the township are having the same problem. Very heavy chlorine, like 2, and the day yesterday, and today chlorine with kind of a rubbery thing to it. Is there some problem that the...
Well, that's really not related to this motion, but I would say that that's really something you need to get in touch with the Water Authority
Yeah, I
about.
just thought it needed to be so other people would know.
Okay,
be able to
yeah.
call about it.
Okay, thank you. But I would say get in touch with the Water Authority to find out about that. Any other comments? In that case, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I move the Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution approving a sewage facilities planning module for the State College Borough Water Authority Nixon Coker Water Treatment Facility.
A second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or further questions from the board? Seeing none, this is a resolution, so it's a roll call vote.
This is presented as Resolution 2020-4. Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Mitra,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Strickland,
Yes.
Ms. Denneny.
Yes.
Motion carries. That finishes the business of the meeting tonight. So now we have reports. Normally we would have COG committee reports and other regional committees. We haven't had any meetings of those committees yet, so I don't believe there's anything there. So we move to the staff reports. And we have the manager.
Thank you. So my report's provided with your agenda. Just a couple of things of note. Tomorrow, there's a closing scheduled on the purchase of an agricultural conservation easement at the Connolly Farm located on Tadpole Road. The consideration for that obligation, for the township's obligation, is $35,250. In exchange for that, 235 acres of prime agricultural land in western Ferguson Township will be brought into the agricultural conservation easement program. The contribution from the township is supplemented by funding from both the state, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and Center County. In exchange for the township's participation in that program, the township owns a portion of that easement. In this case, it is just under 4.7% of the total easement value. I'll attend the closing on behalf of the township, just particularly for the new board members. Historically, the township has participated in the acquisition of conservation easements at $150 per acre of the land to be preserved. We had a meeting of the representatives of the working group to replace the regional permitting and code enforcement software. The search is being conducted by a consultant that's been brought in by the Center Region Code Administration, which is financing the cost of the software replacement. We anticipate a decision on the new software later on this year. Closed out the grant for the acquisition of the electric vehicle and the electric vehicle charging station. Just over $10,700 was received in total for both the charging station and the acquisition of the vehicle from the Alternative Fuel Incentive Program of the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. So we're all set with that program. And then appended to my report is a report schedule for our representatives of our authorities, boards, and commissions for the upcoming 2 years. So we'll try to get those representatives in front of the board on a quarterly basis. If there's a scheduling conflict or one can't make it for any reason, we try to schedule them at the next regular meeting. But this gets the board regular updates on those authorities, boards, and commissions that you appointed representatives to this evening. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, seeing no questions?
Quick question.
You have a question?
So with the agricultural land that we are buying, we'll have a share of 4.whatever%. What happens to that land? What is it used for?
So the conservation easement requires that the property that's been offered for conservation stay in active agricultural use for the perpetuity of the easement. So it basically has to be farmed. There's annual inspections done of all of the property that's conserved within within Center County to ensure that they are complying with the conditions of the easement, that they're continuing to actively farm it, that they haven't developed or built on any of the land. And that is done by the coordinator of the program, Diana Griffith, at Center County.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Dave? Okay, we'll go to the Public Works report.
I can give you a narrative. I don't have anything written in front of you. Tree Commission next meeting is January 20th at 5:30. Administrative building renovations continue. If you came in the back door, if you peek in the hallway door, you'll see some plastic hanging. So the contractor is substantially complete in the police department. There's a few items that need to finish. They've moved into phase 2, so they're working over in the hallway in the administrative side, and they're working in the center area where the GIS technicians were and have been relocated, and then they're going to work their way kind of down the engineering planning hallway toward finance, and that is phase 2. So phase 2 is in progress. The next phase is phase 3. When they get there, you'll see them out closer to the reception area when you come in the front door. That's why you see a dumpster out here, and I apologize, the proximity to the main meeting room door, but that is now the path that they're bringing out their demolition material. So that's where we're at with the building renovation project. In my next written report, I'll provide you a list of contracts and status of where those are at in design for the year 2020. And I did send out a notice to members of our Stormwater Advisory Committee that we did add 2 additional meetings, and so I expect that that group will convene in mid-February and mid-March to continue discussions on the stormwater fee study. The next 2 meetings are going to focus more directly on what the anticipated fee may be, what that structure would look like, changes to the work program that were made as a result of our last meeting, and also what a credit program might look like. And so those are the things that the committee is going to be looking at in the months of February and March. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you. Any questions for Dave? And next we have the Planning and Zoning Director's report.
I'll give that. Jenna left early today, not feeling well, so we hope she feels better. Planning Commission, first meeting will be held January 13th. It's going to be their reorganizational meeting where they'll appoint their officers for the upcoming year. And the regular meeting that will take place right afterward has one agenda item. It's the review of the West Cherry Lane mixed-use building. It's an HFL Corporation project that's been under review for some time now and it's been modified. They're also requesting a modification from the subdivision land development ordinance that I believe will appear in front of the board, this board, at an upcoming meeting, as well as consideration of approval of the preliminary land development plan. We have a number of land development plans that are currently being reviewed by our planning staff. Whitehall Road Regional Park, which was recently approved. That's sort of just kind of shepherding that towards recording. I mentioned the West Cherry Lane mixed-use building. We also have the Harner Farm subdivision plan and the Sheets land development plan. Those two plans are operating in step with one another. They will be in front of the board for consideration in the coming months. I don't have an exact timeline yet on that, but we held a meeting this week to review some of the outstanding items of the traffic impact study that's being reviewed or that's being conducted in conjunction with the plan, and we anticipate that coming to a conclusion very soon. So we've got all the bugs worked out basically. So if anybody asks you as elected officials when that Sheets is going to be built, I would just say the land development plan is forthcoming and will be in front of you for review and conditional approval, hopefully within the next couple of months, as well as the 4-lot subdivision. Planning staff has been working, as Dave mentioned before, on this renovation project. They've been working pretty hard to clear out some space. We have voluminous land development files that are being cataloged and being scanned in and indexed and stored. So we're moving toward digitizing those, which we've done already with our tax parcel files, just over 6,000 files. So some of them are quite a few permits and pieces of paper. So we're offloading a lot of our paper in favor of digital document management, and that's been taking up a bit of our planning staff's time these last couple of weeks. Talked about in my report the meeting with the permitting software vendors. Zoning Hearing Board has a meeting scheduled at the end of January. There's one variance on there for consideration, which is for a property that's located on West College Avenue, in the corridor overlay and in rural agricultural zoning district. The board, but there may be another one that comes in front of the Zoning Hearing Board, but that's probably going to have to wait till February. Other than that, I can try to answer any questions that you may have. Jenna Wargo, who's our Planning and Zoning Director, as I said, isn't here this evening, but if there's any questions I can't answer, I'll bring them to her attention and I'll get your response by email.
All right.
Just wondering, do you know what the nature of the variance request is?
I knew you were going to ask that. No, I'm thinking, I'm sure I do, and I'm sure if I look at it, it'll come right back to me. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick here.
Thank you.
On their variance list. See if she did an agenda. It doesn't look like an agenda's done yet. I'll have to get the details and get back to you.
No problem.
Sorry about that.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Priscilla.
So with respect to the digitizing the documents, is it just being scanned and like you have images, or is it sort of being in digital form where you can search and so on?
It's all full text searchable. The township about maybe 4 years ago now, bought a document management solution called Laserfish. It's a pretty well-known digital document management software in the industry, and it's pretty robust. So they're all being scanned. They're all full text searchable. They'll be indexed by tax parcel ID, so we can narrow down our search that way. But we've farmed out the scanning of it to a firm that does this professionally, and so they've got many of those documents right now that they're working them in. And so we've limited the indexing criteria, because the more indexing that you put in with those, the more costly it is for the township. And really, as long as they're full text searchable, that's all we need. So with all of our tax parcel files, that's how they're set up, and our land development plans and our subdivision plans are going to be set up similarly.
So who is storing these, and where do they stay?
They are stored, they're resident on the township servers, but we have multiple backups.
Any other questions? Okay. Next item on the agenda is communications to the board. This is a chance to mention any communications you've received that might be of interest to the whole board. If you get something that's like, there's a problem with the street sign or something like that, that wouldn't come here, it would go directly to Dave or Dave Montracker. Question that would involve the police would either go to Dave or to the chief. This is just for things that might be of interest to other board members in terms of communications that you'd receive. So, does anyone have any communications to the board?
Well, I had one, but per your clarification,
Okay.
it should probably just go to Dave.
Oh, okay.
But I will say, it was an email from Pine Grove Mills resident wanting to look into getting crosswalks marked in Pine Grove Mills. As there are just a couple, and they're near the school. So he was looking at different intersections throughout the village. So I'll email you that
Okay.
specific
Okay.
request, so thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
Can I answer the question? It hit me like
Oh,
a light
okay.
bulb just
Oh, you-
my question.
The variance at the end of the month is the Islamic Society on West College Avenue, and it's a floodplain variance request. So they're asking to be allowed to build in an established flood zone. It was originally going to be on the board's agenda tonight. If I may, just 2 minutes on variances,
Sure.
right? So variances are because the board will see these, in particular
Right.
for the edification of the new board members throughout the year. So variances are requests for relief from the township zoning ordinances. They're adjudicated by the zoning hearing board, which is an appointed body, meaning the board of supervisors appoints them. We made one appointment tonight. But they operate as kind of a quasi-judicial agency. So they hear these on a case-by-case basis, because what the applicant is asking for is to not have to comply with the zoning ordinance. And I can give more detail at a later time, or if you have any questions. But this particular variance is because we have a very prohibitive ordinance when it comes to building in established floodplains. And that ties to FEMA regulations, the Federal Emergency Management Association, because it's connected closely to flood insurance rates and premiums. So we prohibit building in the floodplain. So occasionally we see requests from property owners who would like to build in the floodplain. They have to meet a pretty rigorous test in order to get their variance. So they have a high test to meet in front of the zoning hearing board. But typically the Board of Supervisors will be presented with these variance requests, not because you're being asked to decide on them yes or no, but because you're given an opportunity as a stakeholder, because all properties in the township you have an interest in, to take a position if you so choose. You may decide that you want to remain neutral on it, and that's commonly what the recommendation from staff is, and just let the zoning hearing board adjudicate the matter. But if it's something that the board feels passionately about or really wants to take a position either of support or opposition to, it'll be presented to you at a regular meeting. You have the opportunity to do so. It was withdrawn from this meeting because they may be making some modifications to the request. If they want to proceed with that variance, this will be up in front of you all on January 20th for consideration of a position on it, and then it'll go to the zoning hearing board at a hearing on January 28th.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. And the next item on the agenda is calendar items. We have the coffee and conversation in the Baileyville Community Hall, January 25th at 8 a.m. That's a chance for citizens to meet with generally the staff, but board members are invited to attend that also, to just have any informal discussions with citizens of the township. I need to announce that we are going to have an executive session right after this meeting. I'd ask the manager and the solicitor to join the board in the next room over. That will give CNET a chance to take things down. We don't have to wait till they're done. And then I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned before 8 o'clock. So-
I lost the bet.